We've just seen a historic development in crypto. The US saw the acceptance of the first Bitcoin ETF on its financial markets, signaling a safe investing opportunity for their public on the global stage. We are entering into a new chapter in the crypto adoption narrative and may finally be crossing the chasm from the early adopters to the early majority investors. Let's take a deep dive and explore the significance of the Bitcoin ETF. In order for something innovative to make its way into the mainstream, it needs to cross barriers of acceptance. Most people will not acknowledge novelty until they have been given the green light by the institutions and the leaders that maintain culture. This is why the US markets play such an important role in the crypto markets. When they give the green light, others follow. In this way, they control what is culturally acceptable or real. It's all good and well for high-towered intellectuals to discuss the philosophy of money systems, but at the end of the day, they're not the gatekeepers of legitimacy in society today. You could look at this as the difference between the discussion of ideas or ideals and how those ideas would play out in the safety of the world. The people in charge of safety and regulation are not usually the same people who philosophize about what ought to be. So the bridging of this gap can be quite large. This is why the ETF decision is such a big deal. This is crossing the chasm of niche ideas into mainstream acknowledgement. This is a gateway for everyday investors who are not technically minded to listen to their financial advisors tell them about the best performing asset of the last decade. This is Bitcoin's mainstream moment. The acronym ETF stands for an exchange-traded fund. It's a financial vehicle generally used to trade commodities on a share market, which provides buyers with protection from the risks of dealing directly with those commodities themselves. For example, I don't have to buy a bar of gold directly myself and find a place to store it. I can just look up a gold ETF on the ASX and purchase some shares in it, which means I'm exposed to the product without the difficulties and risks of custody. The Bitcoin ETF has been a long time coming. Applications have been submitted to the US regulating body, the SEC, for many years without success. This is a big deal because, as usual, when the US gives the green light, other nations with similar interests tend to follow with confidence. This new innovation is difficult to understand, it's vast in scope, and you can bet that financial advisors wouldn't get close to crypto without the go-ahead from the regulators for an ETF. Before this, if an advisor wanted to recommend crypto to a client, they would have to know where to buy it and how to store it securely. So managing that risk is not really feasible for someone who isn't specialized in the area. Most people in finance don't have the crossover skills and technology to understand enough to dive into crypto as an advisor. This ETF is a watershed moment for a bigger portion of the market to get exposure to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that are going to follow. There are many investors whose entire portfolio is driven about what their financial advisor tells them, and at this point the numbers don't lie. You can't look at the performance of Bitcoin over the last 10 years and not recommend this ETF to your clients. It would just be bad advice. In the days leading to the ETF launch, the fees for the 9, excluding Grayscale, the new ETFs, were in a race to the bottom. Each set to undercut its competitors. Application amendments were submitted multiple times to reduce the fees on customer interaction. They have settled on an average fee of about 0.25%. So what's the data telling us after a month of trading? Well, the largest Bitcoin ETF, the BlackRock IBIT, passed $1 billion in volume on day one. It was easily the biggest day one splash in ETF history. That's what the Bloomberg ETF analyst Eric Belchunas has said. He also stated that recently the inflows from the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF has had a strong second wind, with inflows totaling over $5 billion, putting it in the top 7% of ETFs on the market. So you can see that this has been a roaring success quite early on. The cash inflows of Bitcoin ETFs has steadily been increasing. The total net BTC flows of ETFs is getting close to 100,000 Bitcoin. The rate of inflow is also steeply increasing. It hasn't slowed down since the release of the first ETF, and this indicates a growing interest and increase in demand for the product. The top 2 Bitcoin ETFs, the BlackRock IBIT and Fidelity's FBTC, own more than 190,000 Bitcoin since launch. Bear in mind, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in total, and ETFs have taken 250,000 in Bitcoin in total for the ETFs already. So they're absolutely vacuuming up what is available on the market. And I'm sure you can infer a lot about how this is going to affect the Bitcoin price in the coming months, given this is also a halvening year for the network, where the amount of coins released per block is going to split in half around mid-April. Given the barrier of acceptance for ETFs has now been broken, there's talk about Ether ETFs and staked Ether ETFs as well. And there wouldn't be any reason why the rest of the cryptocurrency industry isn't assessed for what could be made into an ETF at this point as well. Given Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, seems to have a strong interest for tokenization, I wouldn't bet we are too far away from the Chainlink ETF soon too. So with that comment, I'll leave today's video with a recent news clip of Mr. Fink voicing his thoughts about what's coming next for crypto. Thanks for watching today's crypto news, and I'll see you next time for another update.
Let me be clear. I think ETFs are step one in the technological revolution in the financial markets. Step two is going to be the tokenization of every financial asset. And to me, this is where we believe it's going. So we're looking at Bitcoin, we're looking at ETFs in the same manner. These are technological changes that can allow us to move forward